I told you.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Leah. First time here, and welcome to our family. Absolutely. Wow. So, I don't even know where to begin after that, It's like, but I will. Martha Creek says, living by our own goals means living by what interests us and not by the goals and expectations other people have for us. And that comes from her book, Presence and Potential. And so I'm wondering if there was a time in your life when you took on goals that weren't yours. Maybe a well-meaning parent or relative thought you should be a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor, or maybe join the family business, but it really wasn't in line with who you were and what your true values and goals were. I can tell you that some of the unhappiest people I knew in medicine were people whose parents wanted them to be doctors. They really wished they were doing something else and ultimately did. I think as we mature along our life's journey, we can choose to reflect goals that more are in alignment with what is our true nature and what calls to our spirit, which leads to happiness and joy in our lives. The other thing I noticed for myself, and maybe you've noticed this too, is that as life progresses, our goals do change. In the beginning, I had, and perhaps you as well, goals about career and finances and family life and relationships. And then further along the line, my goals shifted, and maybe yours too, to more spiritually directed goals and values of kindness and compassion and generosity. And not that worldly goods were necessarily bad, but it's just that the focus had shifted. Some time ago, there was an acupuncturist in my building, and I went to see him for treatment, and we got into conversation, and I was new to Miami and new to Unity on the Bay, and he asked me what was I going to do in my retirement. And I said, well, I'm thinking about spiritual studies. And he said, in my Buddhist tradition, the first half of life is devoted to establishing oneself in the world, one's career, one's profession, one's family life. And then he said, the second half of life, if one is fortunate enough to have it, is devoted to God. And I thought about that. That really struck me deeply, and I have shared that with friends and family over the years. I'm reminded of my dad, who at 98 was telling my son, Matt, you have to have a goal. And he always did. Even though the time frame of the goal might have gotten shorter as he got older, he still had that in mind as something to strive for and something to accomplish day to day. And likewise, Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, at the age of 94, had this famous quote that reflects his view on goals in life. And he said, "I fairly sizzle with zeal, energy, and enthusiasm, eager to do that which ought to be done by me today." And so I think what is important to us shifts, it's that transition time sometimes between goals, between what our life is about. Maybe our purpose has shifted. Maybe things are changing. And it's at those times I think that we can feel lost. And I know that for me at those times, I began to recognize that I really wasn't lost. I was just finding myself. And so I thought we'd have a look at what I really mean by finding myself and why our higher values are important to us and how can we move towards those goals. Well, the self, the finding myself, the self that I'm talking about is our capital S self, our higher self, the self that is innately part of us, that is our Christ nature. And just like we know in unity we are 100% human and 100% divine, sometimes we can feel lost or out of touch with that divine nature that is within us. So, that has happened to me on more than one occasion. I married young, thought I would be a housewife and mother, but unfortunately, life didn't turn out that way for me. My husband had a drinking problem and lost multiple jobs. And so I went to Al-Anon, and I went to church, and I prayed, and I recognized that the guidance I got was to go back to school and to begin to find ways to support myself and my son. And I think that's true for each one of us. At those dark times, in those moments, we find the resources that call to us and speak to us and then move us forward in our lives. Author J.M. Powers said this: "If you want to make your dreams come true, the first thing that you have to do is wake up." I'll say that again. If you want to make your dreams come true, the first thing that you have to do is wake up. And when we wake up, we recognize that our life isn't only about the worldly things, the impermanent things. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when we can shift our focus to the unchanging, to the permanent things, we can put in a practice of spiritual goals, whether it's kindness or generosity or love, and we can have that as be a thing that we want to express in our lives. Jesus is quoted in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. "Ask, and it will be given to you. Search, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened for you." So in metaphysical terms, the door that we're talking about is the door to our mind. It's the door to our consciousness. And what we are given is ideas. And those ideas then are what allow us to move forward in our lives and make choices that are in alignment with our true purpose. Again, Unity's third principle says human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. It's often stated as the law of mind action. Mind, the divine mind, comes in and forms an idea, and then it's expressed in the world. Well, growing up, I went to Silver Bay, which is part of the YMCA on Lake George, and I learned about body, mind, and spirit. And I was always curious about how that was all related. As a physician, I understood about body, and I later learned about mind, thoughts and feelings, how that can influence the body, but I wasn't quite sure how spirit fitted in with that. Then I came to Unity, and I recognized really that spirit is the first part. And so the order changed from body, mind, spirit to spirit, mind, body. And so we can take that in as we look at what's important for us in our lives. I can say that I've been a lifelong learner. It's one of my values and goals. And many of my learning endeavors have come as a result of unwelcome circumstances in my life. The path hasn't been straight. I think I'm going, and all of a sudden it's off here. And then I come back to center and maybe go off that way. And ultimately, the path moves forward. And during those times off the path, I did feel lost and went back to Source, prayed for guidance. And in that, I recognized that state of mind called lost is easily transformed as I recognized that really that process was a process of finding myself. So you might have heard that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Have you heard that one before? Yeah, you've heard that. It's much like the person who has a talent, let's say a talent for music or a talent for art or creative writing, whatever that talent is. And unless that talent is nurtured and developed, it goes really unrecognized. And likewise, our spiritual nature, our Christ nature is within us. And that's something that also needs to be nurtured and developed. And that's part of why we all gather here today, to feel that love and that peace that's generated as part of this experience with each other. Our goals and our values are what's important to us. Our values, like what we speak every Sunday about at Unity on the Bay, generosity, wisdom, love, being spirit-led, these are things that can shape our goals. The other thing that I'm reminded of is Reverend Chris, our former senior minister, when he was here. We had values and goals, workshops and classes, and he said, if you're not sure what your values or goals are, take a look at your checkbook and your appointment book. And maybe now it's all online and we don't have books, but the idea is the same. Where we put our time and our resources really reflect our values. And so if you have a look at that and you decide, I really maybe want to change some of that, there are wonderful values lists online. You can Google values and just take a look and see what resonates with you. So again, I think that happiness and success in life really depend on our spiritual values and goals. And when we express those values, we can really show up as who we truly are. And so I can say when I'm living my values, my spiritual values, I can never be lost. I recognize I'm on the path. And it's a lifelong journey, really, to express my higher self. Well, how can we move towards our goals and our expression of our higher self? One of the things that sometimes can be fun to do is something with kinesiology. If you can use your body sort of as an indicator of what's true for you. Maybe you have two things that you think are both good ideas, and you're just not sure which way to go. You can put one of them in one hand and the other one in the other hand, and just look back and forth and kind of see which way your body leans. It may work for you, but it's something to try. And using the words in Martha's book title, we can say that our potential to actualize our spiritual nature does require us to be present. You know, mindfulness talks about being present on purpose, paying attention on purpose, and I think that's also a very important component, to be able to be aware of what our thoughts and feelings are and to make changes along the way if need be. Self-help author and motivational speaker Jim Rohn said, "The key to success is to focus on your goals, not your obstacles." And that resonates with the unity principles as well. We can release our obstacles. We can let them go. They have no power over us, and affirm what it is that we truly desire and want in our lives, our goals. And one way that we can keep our goals in mind is through our prayer and meditation practice. And as we become silent and listen to the voice of Spirit within, we find the guidance that we need. Martha's advice from her book is to be willing to learn, have a clear vision, and allow time for things to process. You know, I met Martha Creek as an instructor during ministerial school, and again at Unity Village, and here at Unity on the Bay. She is an inspiration and a wise counsel to me and to many others. I love her dearly. And you're invited to join me in a 4-week online book study. It begins on Tuesday evening, June 24th. It's in the format of a spirit groups like we used to have, and it's a discussion. And Martha has agreed to come to our 3rd class to facilitate the discussion and answer questions. And that is really such a blessing and a gift. By the way, the class or the book study is free, love offering suggested. The book is free. Martha has donated those books to us. And if you're online and want to participate, the book can be mailed to you for a small fee. There's more information about registering on our website and the app, and I'll leave it at that. So the message for us is that we can never really be lost. Our divine self is waiting to be discovered and lived. And we have our unity principles that we can use that will guide us along the way. I've discovered that finding myself is a lifelong process. It's not one and done. When I'm quiet, I recognize that I am not lost, just waiting for the seed in me to spring forth into the flower. There are guides along the way, in the people that I meet and that we meet, and in the teachings that we encounter, and also through our inner guidance of Spirit. We each have within us everything that we need to fully actualize our potential and live and express our Christ nature. And so the invitation for us is to recommit to that spiritual path and a happy life. And so it is. Amen.